live with Michael Manring, all the way from Oakland, California. Michael, thank you so much for joining today. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk about your music today.
Oh, the pleasure is absolutely mine, Anthony. Thank you so much for your interest in my crazy music.
Well, as you may recall, and I'll at least recall for the people watching, and we have looks like we have about 10 people watching right now, which is great.
You there?
Yes, hello, and we're getting some questions in and some comments, so I'll be sure to cover that.
Oh, okay.
But my journey with your music started in 1998, I believe. A friend of mine shared a video of you totally tearing basses apart at NAMM.
Uh-oh.
Total shred fest. On your headless Zon, I believe it was. You were in the Zon booth and you played some Beatles medley, and you played just a few pieces. I think something from the Book of Flame. And I remember watching that. I probably watched that video 200 times, and I thought, someday I want to see this guy play live in person. And I live in Arizona, so it never happened. you never came, and not until 2016 when my friend Ken Kaufman and I flew you out for a concert. So it is such a pleasure to get to spend any time talking with you after all of those years of waiting and hoping.
Well, that's very kind of you to say. All those things are very kind. And thank you again for having me for the concert. That was just such a pleasure. And it's on YouTube if people want to see it. Yeah.
Some of it is, yeah.
So,
It
and
used
it
to
was
be
fun.
it used to be up available for sale, but then YouTube stopped selling videos online. So,
Really? I didn't know that. Oh,
yep. Thanks, YouTube.
yeah. Okay.
Anyway, enough of the meta discussion. Let's talk about this album. Your new album is called Small Moments. And you mention a little bit, either in your liner notes or maybe on social media, that writing an album of solo bass music requires some intense concentration and time alone. So can you share a bit about this album, kind of the story behind it, and what led to the recording of it and some of these tracks?
Yeah, this record came about. I released the first record I ever did of all solo bass music. I think it was in 2007, or no, it was earlier than that, even 2005, I think. It's called Soliloquy, and it did really well. It actually, for for a while, for a couple of weeks, it was the best-selling record on CD Baby.
Well, I bought an autographed copy from CD Baby. I remember getting that package, and I was so excited.
Yeah, I mean, it was just really weird. I always have been in love with just the sound of the bass by itself. And I've been a professional musician for a long time, and whenever I talk to people about, I just love doing solo bass music, to a man, they all said, no one will ever want to listen to that. Even people who like I would play something for them and they said, I like that. That's really cool. But no one will ever want to listen to it. And so I really put it off a long time. The Soliloquy was my sixth record, something like that. I can't remember.
Mm-hmm.
I avoided it for a long time. And then I finally just said, it's just something I really want to do. And finally did it. And it was relatively successful. It paid the bills for a while.
That's great.
So I thought, I'd like to do another one. I'd like to do another solo bass record. But, for me, it is a labor of love primarily. I don't, I couldn't really do that. I couldn't really do this kind of stuff any other way. I couldn't really make a record that I didn't believe in, especially like a solo bass record.
Yeah.
It kind of has to be, I have to give my everything I can to it. And that's what I enjoy. So every time I write a solo piece, I can't play it. Very rare. I've tried a couple times and I've come close a couple times. There's uh, the blue moment on this new record, I could pretty much play shortly after I wrote it. But Sardonic Grin, also on the record, literally, I worked on it, I think, for 5 or 6 years before I could play it.
That is, I feel like that is just the testament of an artist that chooses to evolve. I don't know if you feel like it's a choice. Maybe it happens to you, but I think it's so important in the life of an artist to aspire to do something that takes years of development, and it's in your head, like a painting or something. You can visualize it, but to manifest it takes significant effort.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, like you said, I don't think it's a choice. I would do this stuff if I, made no money at it, or, I obviously would have much less time. And instead of taking 5 years to do a piece like that, it would probably take me 20. But it's a passion. And that's what's fun about it. And it may sound strange to people because, these things are really difficult. But that's what I love. And the thing that's really exciting about them is they get easier.
Yeah.
It's been true of all the solo music that I've written. I couldn't play it, and pretty much I couldn't play it on the recording. Usually every recording of every solo piece I've done is, for the most part, is me that just barely getting through it. That's when I recorded it, when I could just, get it kind of to the least level that would be acceptable. Record it. There's a few exceptions, but that's mostly the case. But then they get better, and then little by little, as I perform them over years, I start to really learn what they're about. And I mean, it's really that weird subconscious process where you're teaching yourself something. I mean, it's very bizarre, isn't it?
Definitely. I mean, there's so much to talk about there. I just spent. Well, I actually have a second book coming out this year, and it's
Awesome.
It's a 22-year journey to play King Crimson's song "Fracture."
Oh, no kidding! That's a hard tune.
Yeah. So I have had to relearn how to play the guitar as a result of learning this piece of music, and I'm so often reminded of your story. About how you spent so much time trying to imitate Jaco, and then you found there were these little irritations that were rising to the surface. You want to complete that story for us?
Yeah, absolutely. As a young man, when I was from the time I was 19 to maybe 23, Jaco Pastorius was my idol. I mean, I thought about him every day, most of the day. I was just completely obsessed with him. And I was lucky I got to study with him when I lived in New York and spent a good bit of time with him and hanging out with him. And I got to a point after a couple of years of listening to him where I just thought, that's the best the bass is ever going to get. This is it. This is like, there's certain musicians who kind of invent an instrument and that's it. You're done. And so my job is just to do as good a version of that as I can. And so I just worked as hard as I could to sound exactly like him. And, studying with him, I would bug him constantly about, here's this phrase that you played on this record. When I play it, I'm playing all the right notes, but it doesn't sound like you. Can you show me the fingering you use? He'd show me usually he'd say, I don't remember what fingering I use. I'd say, well, I'm using this fingering. He'd say, yeah, that's probably the one I use. He would say, it doesn't sound like you. And he'd say, yeah, I don't care. It sounds great. Play it your way. It sounds better your way than my way. He would often say that. But I wouldn't listen to him. And I just kept saying, I'm going to try to make it sound like him. And I've just, analyzed every little bit of his technique, and kind of after I was done studying with him, I realized I just couldn't do it. There's just stuff that I was doing. again, playing exactly the right notes, as close to the way he played them as I possibly could. It just didn't sound like him. And, mostly sounded like him, but there were just aspects about it that didn't. And then it occurred to me that the reason it didn't is because I'm not him.
Yeah.
I'm really not very smart. It took me 10 years to figure this out. And that those little things were me. That was me. That was the way I play that. And that was a good thing, and that's what I should focus on. I should turn things around the other way and look at that, that aspect of this particular phrase, the way I'm playing it, that doesn't sound like Jocko, and develop that instead.
Mm-hmm.
And still, try to do the Jocko sound when I can, when it works, but, work on these other things and look at what that is. And for me, that was kind of finally the beginning of kind of being able to move in my own direction. And there was that kind of the surrender, where you don't, you're not trying to be creative at all. You're just surrendering to the hugeness of music. That's kind of liberating in a way. And then if you can do that, I think maybe you can come out on the other side with a different perspective. I don't know. It's an odd process to talk about.
Well, I bring it up because you say the songs get easier. They take years to develop and then they get easier.
Yeah.
And there's a part of me that wonders, is that the next you that's coming up to the surface? Like, it's not Michael trying to be Jocko. It's Michael trying to be even more Michael, maximum Michael coming to the surface. And then once it's there, you kind of scoop it up and, skim off the top. Those become your new songs, and then they get better and better. And over time, that evolves you into the next step. And I like your story about becoming more you through Jocko has inspired me in so many ways. And I'm sure it's inspired many other musicians.
Oh, I'm glad.
And I hear this album, and I love Soliloquy, but I hear this album and I feel like it levels up. And we're seeing here in the comments, the new album is wonderful. This is Omar Morales.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for what you do, Michael. Jeffrey Titus says, you keep evolving. Will you share some of your thoughts on innovation, where you're heading to compose new music?
Well, I so appreciate all these comments and your very kind words, but I have to say that I agree with everything you said, except for that it's Michael, that it's me. I mean, it's a terrible cliche, but it's not really me. There's just something there, and it sounds, yes, I'm from California, totally busted on the new age.
Yeah, the San Francisco area, which is it has a reputation, Michael.
The worst of the worst. I really belong here. But there's music just puts you in touch with that thing where you suddenly go, I don't know where this stuff is coming from. I didn't do this. I worked on trying to make it happen.
Uh-huh.
But I don't know where this stuff comes from. It just comes, and you have to try to do your best to serve it or whatever. Talking about it really is a mess.
Well, I think you're right. And it reminds me of a conversation I had with Trey Gunn just a few weeks ago. He said he thinks of musicians as archaeologists. And it's like they are just digging, and then they discover, and then it's kind of like, oh, here's a site, and I've really got to mine through this carefully, and I'll find what's there. And he said musicians aren't creators, they're seekers, and they discover. So I think that's kind of what you're getting at.
Absolutely. I think I've had this conversation with Trey too. I mean, what a fascinating guy, huh?
Oh, totally.
Such a sweet man.
Absolutely.
We playing a band together. We just released a little video if people want to see.
Oh, cool.
We're playing a Mexican bassist, just 3 bassists. And we haven't released any official recordings, but we've done quite a few shows, and we just released a little video to encourage people to stay at home in Mexico. So if people want to check that out.
I did watch that. Yeah, very cool. So you
But yeah,
mentioned,
that's something I talk about with my students a lot, and I think it helps them understand just this idea that overall music is so much of it is more discovery than invention. That we're discovering this, we have this capacity to hear and react to what we're hearing. And it's not something we're inventing, it's something we're discovering. In particular, when students study harmony, there are these rules that we talk about in harmony. And no one ever tells them that those rules aren't something that somebody invented, but they're discoveries about how we hear, how we react to sounds we hear. So it's a fascinating little world of music.
I love it. So you brought up the tune "The Sardonic Grin," or just "Sardonic Grin," and that it took you years to figure out how to play to an acceptable level. Let's take a listen, and then maybe we'll have a conversation about what makes this piece so difficult.
Okay, perfect.
think I can hear a little bit of difficulty in that piece. I'm not quite sure.
Well, I mean, it's not really that hard of a piece, but it was hard for me.
Well, in that beginning motif, it sounds like there's three guys playing. You've got the percussive right hand popping going on. You've got the open string. You've got the pentatonic thing going on, and then ba da da. It's I can hear you tapping, popping on both hands.
Yeah.
Can you maybe demonstrate a little bit or talk about this
Yeah.
technique?
Let me see. I don't think I'm set up for it quite now, but I think I can do it pretty quickly
Okay.
while I'm talking about it, and maybe give you a little bit of an idea. Excuse me, I have to go get my cord over here.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And I better step on this. Almost with you. Sorry.
No worries.
Big time professional show business, let me tell you. All right. You can see, I think you can see,
Yep,
all right? Yeah.
Yep.
Right. So, first thing I should probably mention, because I'm going to do it, the bass is in an unusual tuning for this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take my G string and tune it up to A. I'm going to tune my E string down to D. So then the resultant tuning I have is D, A, D, A. So fifths stacked an octave apart.
I noticed you do that quite a bit, either fourths stacked or fifths stacked.
Yeah, boy, these things, these are long stories. So I went to music school and studied all about harmony. A lot of what I do relates to the fact that, in my estimation, where we are in kind of music history, especially in the West, is at a crisis point where kind of everything has broken down and we have to figure out where to go from here, whether it's just musical nihilism at this point or whether there's a way forward. And if the way forward is somebody's already started it, or maybe we're in the middle of it, or we don't know.
So are you talking about society, or are you talking about music as an art form, or musicians? Like, what has broken down,
Right. A little of everything, actually, because these things are all so deeply connected.
Of course, yeah.
So mostly the thread of Western music. There's a very clear thread that we can draw of Western music. In fact, we can start it in the Middle Ages and draw it up through about 1950. And it's very clear, and you can really see how everything is moving and it's all connected. And then it's already started to disintegrate in the early 20th century, and then it really kind of breaks apart. And a lot of other things happen, and other musics come in, and at least in my estimation, and not only mine, a lot of people feel this way. We're in this kind of crisis point where nobody really knows what's going on. We don't really know what's happening. We can't tell if there's a singular movement of music. Probably not. Like in the classical era, all educated musicians were basically writing with a lot of the similarities. A lot of the history of Western music was about this kind of progress in harmony. I hesitate to use the word progress because you don't necessarily have to look at it that way. But this progression in any rate of harmonic possibility that really most likely is utterly exhausted now. There's no other place for it to go because so much has been done.
You mean like we're out of unique melodies, we're out of chord change possibilities, that there's not a whole lot new to discover as the musical archaeologist with our standard Western music ears?
For the most part, yeah, there are new things to be done, but they won't be what's the word I'm looking for? Architectonically new. They'll
Mm,
just be a new version of something that already somebody else has done, or there'll be new combinations of things that
sure, sure.
because there's only 12 notes and we use them in certain ways. And so, we're kind of in this place of trying to figure all that out.
Okay.
So one of the things we have to do, or some of us want to do because we're in this situation, is figure out what we're going to do with harmonic language, what kind of language we're going to use in harmony. And so one thing I like a lot is quintal harmony. That's harmony based in fifths.
Like
And so
quartal is fourths.
quartal is fifths, quartal is fourths, quintal is fifths.
Okay.
As you can understand, they're very closely related
Mm-hmm.
because fourths are inversions of fifths.
Right.
They're the same thing backwards.
Yep.
But they're not exactly the same. So one of the ways I like to work is with quintal harmony. It's not something I invented or pioneered necessarily, but it's a way of using harmonic language that I find interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of what I do in a lot of pieces, I'll use certain kinds of quintal harmony where the chord structures I'm using, they don't really have names. They're not terribly unusual, but they don't really have names, and the normal names you would give them don't really necessarily apply. And then often I'll use more conventional harmony, triadic harmony, as resolution points. So I'll use this kind of moving kind of quintal or quartal harmony as a way of presenting some kind of harmonic movement. And then when we get to a really identifiable chord, that'll be a point of resolution, as opposed to the old method of resolution where everything goes from a dominant chord, which is a very standard resolution in music, to a tonic. So
for you, when you're playing, the impression I get, because you're constantly changing tunings on not this bass, but all the others basically, is you have a home bass that's probably, it seems to be FB flat, or something like that. And then you change it with the tunings, but it's kind of like you always know when to return back home, but you use the other tunings to allow for the triadic harmony, and then you'll return home. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's a very good analysis of it. So one of the things that musicians who are interested in musical history have to deal with is the fact that in the 20th century, a lot of music, and virtually all academic music, so music that people who went to conservatory wrote, was either atonal or close to atonal.
Right.
The word atonal carries with it a lot of complex baggage, but
you don't mean it in a subjective way, like my wife would hear it and say that's atonal. Like there is an actual musical definition of atonal. Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Okay.
Right. And the way I'm using it here is that music that has a tonal center, often described as a center of gravity, that all the notes within the fabric of the music relate to this, typically one note, to some degree two notes. And most music is that way. It was really only this period in the 20th century where people just decided that was a horrible thing and no music should ever be composed that way ever again.
Like Schoenberg and that kind of thing, right?
Shostakovich. Yes, Schoenberg was he was the real champion of this concept. And so writing music without a tonal center is really, really, really hard to do, because we are always looking for a tonal center, and you can just kind of mash your hands down on the keyboard and play a bunch of notes, and your brain will instantly go, okay, which is the tonal center, like it or not. Subconsciously, we're just wired to do that, and no one knows why.
Yeah,
which is really fascinating. Some researchers have been studying animals to try to figure out if they do that, and the preliminary research shows that no animal does. It's only humans that do that.
Huh.
So I am willing to entertain the implementation of this weird skill by extraterrestrials as a conspiracy theory on this one. What anybody's got, I'm willing to listen to it.
You really are meant to be in Oakland, California.
It's perfect. But yeah, I really love tonality. I studied, anyway, Arnold Schuldenberg, in order to really write music that doesn't have a tonal center, you have to have some kind of system, because our brains are always looking for some kind of tonal center. And he invented this rather elaborate system for writing so that you really force the brain not to have a tonal center. And so I studied that music a fair amount, but just decided I really like tonality and I wanted to work in tonal contexts. And even Schoenberg was famous for saying that there's still a lot of good music to be written in the key of C major. So even he acknowledged that. But yeah, so I'm just kind of looking for harmonic language to use. It's not going to be original, but hopefully it's going to be personal.
So when do we get to the slapping, tapping, and popping? I'm sure that's what some people are asking.
Right, let's do that. Let's do that. Enough of the California jive. Can you see okay? Is this okay?
Yeah, it's good.
So right, the beginning of that is this. What I liked about that is that's just one string. So on one string, I can play something relatively interesting that sounds like a nice accompaniment. And it's just this technique that I've kind of worked on over the last 10 years or so of playing various kinds of rhythmic ways of playing. And it's nice because I can do something on one string. And then I add this a bass line below it in fifths. It's nice, solid fifths. And I liked that because I liked it because it's a cliche. It's a blues cliche. And I thought, that's really cool. In general, as composers, we try to avoid cliches like that. And I certainly try to avoid them a lot, but I like sometimes like being on the edge of a cliche like that.
So you're doing this ironically? Is that why it's sardonic grin?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I would love to work it out if I mean it ironically or sardonically. I'm not good enough with language to know which I mean, but one of those, yeah, definitely. And so I thought, oh, this will be fun. I'll write a piece where I start like that, and you think it's going to be like some kind of blues, it's going to do that. It's going to do that, but it doesn't. Instead, it goes off and to this. This other thing that sounds like, I don't know, fingerstyle guitar or something. And I thought, oh, this will be fun. I'll write this piece that kind of sets up these expectations and then subverts them in various ways. And yeah, did I answer your question?
Yes, you answered my question.
Okay.
Let's get to maybe a question from one of the commenters. How much do you think you absorb from current music to inspire what you write? Or do you consider small moments comes from more isolated or internal ideas?
Oh, boy, that's a great question.
That's Omar Morales.
That's a great question, Omar. I love these questions because there's definitely an answer, but I don't know what it is.
I don't know is perfectly acceptable.
Well, I should think about it a little bit. For small moments in particular, there's always stuff that I'm listening to that I'm really into. For small moments in particular, yeah, there were some various things that, sometimes I would try to nick something on purpose. But a lot of it for this kind of music, a lot of it comes from like this, sitting down and playing the bass and going, oh, that's cool. I can do something with that. And it's funny that I can do this kind of blues cliche. And then I can go off into some other area. A lot of it comes about in that way. But I love listening to music, and I'm always checking out things, and they're inspiring me in different ways. And sometimes negatively, and that's good. I like that. I often will listen to a piece of music and go, I definitely don't want to do that. I guess sometimes I mean it like you think I mean it, but often it's like I go, that is amazing. That's awesome. I don't want to do that.
Yeah. My son, well, all my kids love watching Dude Perfect, which is this. Do you know them? Dude Perfect. It's this group of guys on YouTube, and they do like sports tricks. Like they'll throw a ping pong ball 50 feet behind them to like turn off a light, and it bounces into a cup. That kind of thing.
Right.
And then they all start screaming and jumping and whatever. Well, they mostly play this like. There's a band called Imagine Dragons, and there's like 100,000 bands that sound exactly like them. Right. And I do the same exact thing. I'm like, that is definitely what people are doing today, and that is not what I will be doing,
Yeah, it's really helpful, isn't it?
It's very helpful, and it's cool that my kids love this music so much. And they've made their own playlists and stuff like that, which is cool. But it's funny that they'll hear me listening to your music and they'll go, is that Michael Manring? Is that is that Henry Cow? Is that The Resident? So they know that these things exist. And they choose to say, well, that's not the music I will be listening to. Yeah. So it's been an interesting journey, but let's get to another track on this album. How about the Blue Moment? You mentioned that's another tough one. Are you using your fretless on that one? I forget.
I'm using my hyper bass on that, but I can't really give you a demonstration of it.
That's okay.
It would take a while to get it all.
No problem. But let's listen to the track and see what people think.
Okay.
That does sound like a really tough one.
Yeah, no, that was nice because I wanted to write.
Sound like a really tough one.
I wanted to write something that was
Am I on your
really.
phone?
Yeah, sorry, there we're better.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it was. I wanted to write something that wasn't really that hard, but that one is hard because of the electronics. So what I'm doing on that one is the hyperbase is plugged into my effects unit that captures the sound of each string separately, and then it can make a duplicate of each of those single string sounds, and then you can manipulate the sound of each string within that. One of the things you can do is change the tuning of the string.
Right.
And it actually makes 2 copies. So you have a total of 3 different basses playing, the real one you're playing and the 2 ones that are created in the machine. And they can be tuned to whatever you want, and you can change the tuning. So I change them all. So
this is like bassception, right? You're stacking virtual basses in different tunings on top of what you're actually playing using a quadraphonic pickup. So
right.
You have what, 4 to the 3rd possibilities, something like that?
Right. So it's pretty interesting. And the nice thing about the machine is it can do tuning changes that I can't do. Like if I wanted to change all strings like a 5th or a 4th all at once, I can't really do that with the mechanisms.
Huh.
But I can do it with the machine. It will do that. And so I just got really into the different stuff I could do with it. And with that piece, it's, to me, the obviously I could just play the fake basses and do crazy things with the tuning of those, but they actually don't sound that good on their own, you know?
Sorry, this is almost too much.
Oh, sorry.
I don't mean too technical. Just when you say, obviously I could do this, it's like none of this is obvious, Michael.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
So wait, you've got 4. You're playing each string independently. What is a fake bass? Is that a layer, like an augmentation, or is it like almost like a MIDI guitar? How what you play is not what you hear, and you can choose one of those alternate, sounds, or what?
It's very similar to MIDI.
Okay.
There's some really important differences. It's physical modeling. So what it's doing is taking the sound you're giving it and restructuring it. MIDI takes the sound that you're giving it and triggers something else.
Right.
And with MIDI, you have a lot of limitations on what you can do with that triggered sound. So you can do stuff with it, but it's really tricky. With physical modeling, it will react to anything you do. So if I scratch on the string, on the real string, the model will react to that in some way and recreate that sound in some way.
Huh.
You can't do physical modeling via MIDI because there's too much information.
Right.
And MIDI will only do so much information.
So this is a sonic augmentation. Like
yes.
It takes the actual sound wave and does something to it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It's just massive number crunching. It takes the sound wave, and for those people that know, like physical modeling is used a lot to emulate amplifiers and stuff like that. And what it's doing is it's analyzing the difference of your guitar, the output of your guitar, and then the end result is sounding what it sounds like when it comes out of the amplifier, and it puts that in a model, in a computer model, and it does that it applies that model to the sound all the time, so that it sounds like you're playing through an amp. And this is really, by the way, this is really an astonishing technology. I don't think we've
sounds like it.
with what this is.
Who makes this hardware?
This one is made by Roland, and there's a lot of physical modeling stuff out there, and virtually all of it is designed to just replicate things that already exist.
Like the fractal audio systems, like
the fractal's a really good one. Yeah,
you steal the soul of another amplifier,
right?
Just by listening to it, basically.
But it doesn't have to be that way.
Right.
So you could if you have this, the skill and the intelligence and everything to do it, you could, I could physically model my bass with strings that are 100 feet long, made out of glass, played underwater,
No
for instance.
way. So it's that kind of, it's beyond just amp modeling. This is true mathematically, like material based physical modeling.
You can model anything that you can think of. Yeah.
That's incredible.
And but the problem is, it's the software engineers that do this have to, it's a hard job,
Right, right.
and then they have to market it.
Yeah.
And virtually everything that's on the market is just made to emulate things that already exist, and to make it so we don't have to carry amps around and things like that. And they've gotten quite good at it. But if there was a market for it, they could do really, really crazy stuff.
Hmm.
So I'm hoping they will eventually. But this device that I'm using, it's mostly designed so that if you're playing one bass, you can model it into a different kind of bass. So you're playing a Fender Precision bass, and you can make it sound like a Rickenbacker bass, for instance.
That's pretty cool. What's the model number of this Roland unit?
It's the VB99.
Okay.
And
you don't need a special pickup or anything for it, right?
You do need a special pickup for
Oh,
it.
you do?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's really the best way to do it. You can do it other ways, and they're getting pretty good at doing this kind of stuff without a pickup, special pickup now. But I'm skeptical how far they'll be able to go with it. I don't know if they'll ever get to the place. I'm very doubtful they'll ever get to the place like what I'm doing on the Blue Moment without the special pickup. But I'm into the special pickup. I don't have any problems with that. But yeah, so one of the ways that they do set up the modeling here is you can just kind of create a bass of your choice. You put with the pickup wherever you want it, and you can whatever kind of strings you want. There's more to say about the process than that, because it really is fascinating, and it could be completely game changing in everything that has to do with music, making music. But we'll leave it at that for now. If people have questions, I'll be glad to answer them. But so what I did is I modeled another bass that sounds kind of like my bass I'm playing, and that allowed me to use different sets of tuning. So I have I can play in 3 different tunings at once. And with this piece, I decided to start just with the bass, with the real bass. And then at one point I kick in the imaginary basses to play along with it. Because if I play just the imaginary basses, the technology isn't quite there. I can't say that. It's the implementation on this unit was never really designed so that sound on its own would be as beautiful as just playing an instrument. That could certainly be done, but there's some tricks that have to be done in order to do that.
That's amazing. I just realized I had the notes that come with the Bandcamp release of your album open, and I never even referred to them because this music is so engaging in the first place.
Oh, thank you.
I'd love to have another conversation with you specifically about these things in the notes, but I don't want to run the stream too long. Typically I do an hour. Yeah. But I do want to remind everyone, this album called Small Moments is available on Bandcamp, and I've got the URL on the screen right now on the lower left, michaelmanring1.bandcamp.com.
Thank you.
It's really... and I try to feature albums that are not just albums. This is art. And this album is artwork. And it is art for the soul, for the ears, for the mind. And I really want to encourage you, if you don't already own it, go to the Bandcamp site. You can listen to it for free once or twice, and then Bandcamp will say, hey, sounds like you like this album. Maybe you want to buy it. Just buy it. It's art, and it's worth owning. And it comes with this incredible text file full of all of these really detailed notes, including every single tuning that Michael is using. And I don't mean like this bass is EADG. It's like EADG, then F sharp ADG and then F sharp G DG. Like he walks you through all of the tunings in a song and talks through at length the inspiration for each piece. So I really want to encourage you, and especially some of the people here in the live stream, they're asking some questions that are fairly detailed about the album. You can get a lot of that detail in that notes file. So just buy the album, download it. Michael, is it coming out on CD or any physical release?
Yeah, I'd always planned to do it on CD, and I'd started the process when the COVID thing hit, and they had to close down the pressing plants. And I'll check with them. They may be open again maybe next week.
Yeah.
And I'll see if they're open and I can finish the process. Then it'll be a couple months after that.
Yep. Okay, great. And yeah, definitely pick this up. It's a great album. It's how many tracks? 11, 12. There's 12 solo bass pieces. Some of them are heartbreakingly beautiful. So yeah, thank you, Michael, for this album. It's funny. One of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is because you mentioned Wittgenstein, who is in several of the books I've been reading lately about certainty and belief. So that's a whole other conversation there. But I want to close this interview with my favorite song of yours, which I don't know if you have performed live. It's called I Left America.
Oh, okay.
And something that's so distinct about your music to me is the way that it sounds. You microphonically record yourself playing a bass, which is unusual, and this is not like something new that you've brought to the scene. You've been doing this for 20 some years.
Yeah.
And I don't mean you've been doing this, like playing bass. I mean, you've been recording yourself in this style, which is completely unique. And for the people who are just hearing some of this music for the first time, can you walk through what makes your music sound this way? Why does it sound, other than, Michael playing, why does it sound like it does? It doesn't sound like a Victor Wooten record or something like that.
Well, thank you. As I said, people, my whole life have told me that no one will ever want to hear solo bass, and that just puzzled me so much. And many nights I laid awake wondering why that was the case. And one of the things that came to mind is that bass guitar just has a single mono output. And most of the other instruments that people said that they would like to hear solo they tend to be acoustic instruments. And so any acoustic instrument has a really interesting interaction with sound in space. And bass is it's kind of interesting how little interaction it has that way with kind of a spatial element of sound. And so I got really interested in things I could do to use the spatial element of the sound. One of the important things to know about sound is that we interpret where sounds are coming from using high frequencies. And there are basically very little or no high frequencies that come out of a standard bass guitar. And so what I do is I put microphones on the instrument itself, not on an amplifier, just on the instrument. And what that does is it allows you to retain the acoustic quality of the instrument. So I tend to have the instrument plugged in as well, and I combine these signals so that the instrument still has the depth of field that an acoustic instrument has, but it has all the richness that an electric instrument has. And I've experimented with this in different ways for many years, and I've just always loved doing it. And I think I did this process I did not do it with every piece on Small Moments. There are a couple pieces that I didn't do it with, because sometimes it's nice to change things up. But I usually tend to do that with solo recordings.
Yeah, and you'll notice on the piece Tetrahedron, which I think we could do a whole hour on that piece. You can hear your fingers, you can hear the ridges on the strings, you hear you sliding up, and you can hear the fretboard, you hear the whole instrument, and then sometimes you mix it out. And I was wondering, is that because of the mechanics of the tuners? You don't want to hear the clicking?
Yeah, it's a really interesting choice in the mixing process. Because of the way I record, I end up with a lot of channels of a solo bass piece. In that one, I've recorded each string separately, and if you listen carefully, you hear how they're panned.
Yep.
The inner two strings are panned like this, and the outer two strings are panned like that. And I have various things moving. So I'm recording with microphones, and the mechanics I'm using are really, really noisy. So when I put one of those levers in the microphone, it goes, and really distracting. For years, I wanted to be able to fund a project of making them more acoustically silent, but I don't have enough money to do it.
Uh-huh.
So in the mixing process, I try to decide how much of those things to leave in and how to mute them. And you can also hear me breathing.
Yes.
And sometimes I take it out, and sometimes I leave it in. And in tetrahedron, I take a deep breath at this one point when I'm about to play something, and it's pretty loud. And I thought, I should take that out. And then I thought, I don't know, I think I'll just leave it in.
I love that you left it in.
Thank you.
In speakers, you don't really hear this kind of thing. The room fills with the sounds of the frequencies of the bass and whatever. But in headphones, it's such an intimate listen. I love it. I really love it. I love the sound of your records. Your bass always sounds awesome. So speaking of which, I just love the sound of the bass on I Left America. And it sounds like you're using the same bass and recording technique on, I can't remember the song, on Small Moments. Which one is it?
Yeah, no, actually, I did not play that bass on Small Moments.
Oh, okay. What is this bass on I Left America?
On I Left America, it's in the other room. It's an acoustic bass guitar.
That's what I thought. Okay.
It's made by Jean Larrivée, who's one of the best acoustic guitar makers. And I found it in 1987. I went to a NAMM show, and he had it there. And he sold it to me for next to nothing. It was kind of amazing because he had made it just to draw attention. It's a fretless 5-string acoustic bass guitar, and at the time that was a really weird thing. And it was the first one he ever made, and he just wanted to draw attention to his booth, and that's why he brought it there. But I just played it and fell in love with it, and so that's what I play on I Left America. And I didn't have time to write a piece for it for the new record, so
well,
didn't make the appearance.
I hope you don't mind me pulling this one out, but I just love this piece. So
my pleasure, by all means.
All right, and before we close, I just want to remind people, manthing.com, that's where you can find out all about Michael Manring. That's his official website. And then the Bandcamp link on the lower left, that's where you can purchase the new album, Small Moments. And there's usually dynamic pricing available. You can pay different amounts, so feel free to throw extra in for Michael if you have it, and I recommend it. So thank you, Michael,
we have to say too, everything that Anthony does is amazing. He's exposing incredible music, like a lot of my musical heroes. I've learned a ton from checking out his stuff. So please subscribe. I don't know what the best place is to check out, but you will learn so much from following him online. I mean, he's really doing a great service for the musical community. So please take care of Anthony.
Thank you very much. Yes, like, subscribe, follow, comment, all those things. Make weird music. All right. Thanks a lot, Michael. And I'll get you after I end the stream.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.